We're live. Welcome to another episode of Book Club with Haidt and Kelly, a podcast where we read books, and obviously because it's called Book Club, and we talk about these books, and the books are all these self-improvement books, psychology books, biology books, philosophy books, all with the intention to improve our lives, to read them to figure out how we can improve our lives. That's what we're doing around here, trying to understand ourselves, human behavior, other people, how people around us behave, and doing it it's seemingly one chapter at a time. I'm not getting through these books very quickly anymore, but I'm getting a lot of meat out of them. We are getting through them, so this is Book Club, and you can catch us live on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube. If you're not already, you can catch us live and join in do the thing in the chat and leave comments or questions. We record, today's Monday, January 8th, 8:12 p.m. Used to do this in the morning time, and there was more traffic in the morning time, but we're doing this in the evening time now because work and school and life, and it's what we're doing right now. So maybe we'll go back to the morning time. We probably will. Probably go back to this. It makes more sense for my day, but it's tough with work, and I got dentists. I got to get a fucking tooth fixed tomorrow. It sucks, dude. But anyway, catch us live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. You can find the links to the live on my blog, cadentkellysblog.wordpress.com. Has links to all of the lives, to the socials, for all of your questions. Go to the blog, cadentkellysblog.wordpress.com. Today we're gonna be grinding out some more Righteous Mind. Here you go, by Jonathan Haidt. His 2012, some would say, masterpiece, and it's a great book. I'm excited to get back into it, but let me talk about myself for a minute. Let me get warmed up. Let me get the juices flowing. I have a tooth that my dentist believes is fractured because I can't chew on it, and it hurts. It has the cold and hot sensitivity, and I got it filled last week. Nothing, still fucking kills. Well, it actually doesn't kill all the time. It only hurts when I munch on it, or when, cold water or hot food gets pressed right onto it, which is weird. It's so weird, the cold and hot sensitivity, because after he filled it, supposedly it's not supposed to be vulnerable, right? I don't get it. I don't get dentistry. Sometimes it's like I don't think it's as shady as a car mechanic. I feel like car mechanics are shady. Kind of half-assing what they're doing, but also trying to squeeze me of every penny. Sometimes I feel like that at the dentist, where they're just squeezing me of every penny. But I don't know. I don't know. It didn't. The filling that we did last week, it was supposed to be the conservative approach to this issue. But he said there's a chance that it was fractured and it would need a crown, whatever. So that's what I got to do tomorrow. Sucks to be me sometimes, you know what I mean? Not really. It does not suck to be me. I've got a great life, and everyone has issues every now and then. So that's taking up a ton of my time. My chair freaking squeaks, dude. And then if I pull up the arm, it doesn't squeak, but then I can't use it. So I gotta get my fucking tooth fixed, and we're going back to school, baby. Today's day one. Actually, I want to pull up my school schedule again because I'm a scholar, and that's also been, as you might remember, that was why I took so much time off. Well, I thought, I'm trying to do what I can to not take time off again. I want to record the podcast. I want to get these episodes out. I want to keep reading the books that I want to, my personal books, and not be so bound to the to the textbooks, to the reading material, the classes, even though it's exhausting. Last semester we took I took 10 credit hours. I took 4 classes, 3 of which were 3 credit hours and one was a 1 credit hour. It was a class on how to use the library. That was so useful, so helpful. So I had a 10 credit hour semester last semester, and today starts day 1 of 15 credit hours. We're doing anthropology 1000, introduction to anthropology, anthropology 2010, which is peoples and cultures of the world. We're doing philosophy 1250, which is critical thinking. Philosophy 3010. This is all at Weber State, by the way. 3010 philosophy is medieval and classical philosophy, or let's see. Medieval classical philosophy, yeah. And we're doing Psych 1010, Introduction to Psychology, because I took that like 6 years ago and got a C, and I'm not buying it, you know. If I'm gonna go try to be a psych major or minor, whatever, with this funky degree I'm getting, I want to have decent grades. So I'm retaking this Intro to Psych class on my own dime, and I'm paying the price to retake classes. It stinks, but I can a little subtle gloat is I got a 4.0 last semester, so I know I'm capable of doing well in school at all, let alone to do well with 10 credit hours. So I'm pushing myself right now with 15, but the goal is straight A's, baby. Never cared about getting straight A's in my life. I actually still don't really care. I still feel like school is a scam, but I love it. I love these topics. And I want to be proficient in these topics: psychology, philosophy, and anthropology. I want to be proficient and an expert, and it will help with this podcast. So it'll help give me content, or maybe context, as I study the material. When I read the books, I'll have a better understanding of what's going on and what's being said. My opinions will be, just because you have a degree doesn't make you a genius or even that wise. But I hope that the outcome resembles some kind of increase in critical thinking, because I think that's what's most important, is an individual's ability to be a critical thinker. And I heard that for the first, or at least it resonated for the first time, from Jordan Peterson in one of those class lectures that he was posting videos on. So critical thinking is a skill that I wish to hone in on, and I believe that you can get it in so many different ways, but going to university is just one way. Hank Green, the biologist guy on the YouTube, I forget what his channel was called. He's doing a coding class that my buddy wanted us to take, and I would do it if I wasn't feeling the heat from this school semester, from this 15 credit hours. So anyway, there's lots of chances for education out there, and to improve your critical thinking skills, to be able to look at problems, look at events in the world, and have an appropriate reaction and response, to interpret things the most accurately, to respond properly, to understand reality in its true sense, and not be persuaded by your own biases or emotions. And that's what I love about this the Righteous Mind book that we're covering, is so much of it is well, at least what we're talking about right now is understanding how humans are what Haidt describes as intuitionists, or rather, he's an intuitionist, which means that we are obedient first to our passions and then to our rational mind. In fact, he argues that our rational mind is constantly seeking to justify our passions, the things that happen within our emotions, within our heart, the instances of rage and of lust and joy and fear. Our rational minds are constantly seeking to rationalize those feelings, those experiences. So without any further ado, it's a great segue. We're going to get right back into where we're at, and then we may even touch base in part 2. But we left off, we read chapter 2. We did chapter 1 and 2. So if you haven't listened to that part yet, go back and listen to the first episode posted last week on like Wednesday or Thursday because of the holiday, and get yourself some context to what we're jumping into. We're jumping into chapter 3, the elephant's rule. Yeah, I don't want to. I will, because I do, but I don't want to go back and explain everything that we talked about last week. Elephants are our emotions. Elephants are the passions that we experience. They're the fits of rage and lust and fear and joy. And elephants, our passions, as he argues again, are what control us, or what we are most obedient to. I should have started this episode earlier. I was making dinner. We're going to finish at like 9:15. Or we could just cut it like a couple minutes early and do it at 9. But I got to just do these in the morning. But I'm busy, man. I'm fucking busy. I got shit to do. Everyone's got shit to do. Chapter 3, Elephant's Rule. Page 64. Explains the goal for this chapter. And I love pointing out the objective that it's so awesome when an author illustrates what the point of the preceding content will be. It gives us an idea of what to expect, and then how to piece together the information that he provides, or that they provide. Yes, okay. I remember last week talking about the scripture, Matthew 7 or something like that, how Jesus says, why are you pointing out the speck in your brother's eye when you have a beam in your own eye? First, cast out your own beam, the beam in your own eye, before you point out the speck in other people's eyes. Right? The point, the analogy is, well, before I do that, he brings up another similar analogy that Buddha provides. Buddha says it is easy to see the faults of others, but difficult to see one's own faults. One shows the faults of others like chaff winnowed in the wind, but one conceals one's own faults as a cunning gambler conceals his dice. Which is, I love reading the chaff winnowed in the wind, because I didn't used to know exactly what that meant, but I recently saw a TikTok video of how the chaff is divided from the wheat, and I don't want to explain it because I just learned about it. You should go watch a YouTube video about it because it makes a lot of sense. People literally sift chaff from wheat through wind. I don't know. I don't know exactly why this happens, but when you harvest the wheat from the plant, you get like grainy parts of the plant that don't grind as well into flour. So the way that, is it the farmers? The way that they separate the chaff from the wind is they take a scoop of it And on a breezy day, at least they used to, kind of, if you're watching the stream, you kind of sift it out of your hand, and the wheat is heavy and will fall into a bucket, but the chaff is light and will blow out and not land in the bucket. And they'll do that several times to sift out the chaff from the wheat. And so Buddha is using the same. And someone figured out how to do that, and then they learned how to make bread. And they use the flour, or they use the wheat and ground it into flour to make bread. And how they figured it's how people figured out how to make food, certain kinds of food, is astonishing to me. I mean, at a certain point, once people knew that, if you do like if you put grape juice in a barrel for a long period of time, it'll turn into this kind of sour grape juice that makes you feel funny. And same thing with beer, man. They knew that about that the fermenting process happened. If you did this and you introduce certain ingredients to foods, like, isn't it yeast in beer that makes beer? Like fermented yeast? I don't know. But they figured it out, and it's fascinating to me that they figured it out. And that you make cheese. I saw a video of how people make cheese, and again, go watch a YouTube video. It's not that hard, but it took like some creativity from some person to take cream from a cow, and you boil it, and then you separate the skim from the cream, the boiled cream, and then you churn it, and then then you wrap it in a ball, and it's wild to me how people figured out how to make shit. Anyway, so Buddha says the same thing that Jesus says, and if Buddha is he a copyright? Is Jesus plagiarizing Buddha, like the fucking Harvard chick? Probably not. But Buddha first says that it's easy to find faults in others, but difficult to see one's own faults. One shows the faults of others like chaff winnowed in the wind, but one conceals one's own faults as a cunning gambler conceals his dice. Haidt continues by saying Jesus and Buddha were right. And in this chapter and the next one, I'll show you how our automatic self-righteousness works. It begins with rapid and compelling intuitions. That's link 1 in the social intuitionist model, which we haven't talked about, but he talked about earlier. I shouldn't have read that because it was in parentheses. I didn't have to read that. It begins with rapid and compelling intuitions, and it continues on with post hoc reasoning done for socially strategic purposes. Here are 6 major research findings that collectively illustrate the first half of the first principle. Intuitions come first. And in the next chapter, I'll give evidence for the second half, strategic reasoning, second. Elephants rule, although they are sometimes open to persuasion by others. So this first chapter is devoted to understanding our elephant, the passions, why we're obedient to our passions. And the next chapter that we're going to cover in this episode is to explain the function of the writer. And what I appreciate about Haidt is his bibliography it's insane. It's very long. And I try to follow up with, I read all of the reference notes that he puts in. Very thorough, very, to me, it seems like it's, not like I'm spending all my time fact checking his sources and, that we're cherry picking the data essentially. And of course, you should be wary of everything that you hear and read and listen to, which is also the same thing as hear. So take it all with a grain of salt, although I have great confidence in the research and the findings and the claims that Haidt makes. So here we are trying to understand our elephants. Jesus and Buddha were wise to say, first consider your own faults before you point out the faults of others. But why are we compelled to do that in the first place? Why are we compelled to ignore our own problems and our own shortcomings, and so eager to point out the faults of others? And that's great. That's a great question, and that's what I'm very interested in. That's what he addresses here. So the first point that he uses, or that he explains, brains evaluate instantly and constantly. I said he provides an excellent description of the writer on page 66. Talks about affective primacy, which is our nature to instantly judge everything we observe in our environment to determine if we should approach or avoid something. A spell check always fucks me up. It's not a book. It's not an episode of Book Club if there's not spell checking errors or whatever. Spell correct. Oh my God, what is that called? Autocorrect. Okay, brains evaluate instantly and constantly. So on page 66, he offers a really good explanation of the rider, of the elephant, and the rider. So in a landmark article, I don't know how to say this properly, Zajonc. Zajonc. So it's a last name. Zajonc urged psychologists to use a dual process model in which affect or feeling is the first process. It has primacy both because it happens first and because it is more powerful. The second process, thinking, is an evolutionarily newer ability rooted in language and not closely related to motivation. In other words, thinking is the rider, affect is the elephant. Affect, probably say affect is the elephant. The thinking system is not equipped to lead. It simply doesn't have the power to make things happen, but it can be a useful advisor. Zajonc said that thinking could work independently of feeling in theory, but in practice, affective reactions are so fast and compelling that they act like blinders on a horse. They reduce the universe of alternatives available to later thinking. The rider is an attentive servant, always trying to anticipate the elephant's next move. If the elephant leans even slightly to the left, as though preparing to take a step, the rider looks to the left and starts preparing to assist the elephant on its imminent leftward journey. The rider loses interest in everything off to the right. That's a great, I love that quick, easy description of the elephant and the rider. The elephant is reacting to the world around us, while our rational minds, the rider, is not in control of the elephant. It's merely justifying and reacting to the decisions that the elephant makes. So when the elephant starts to lean and move to the left, the rider is then not trying to correct. It's not yanking the reins of the elephant to move in the other direction. It is instead looking to justify why the elephant is moving in that direction at all. The second point is social and political judgments are particularly intuitive. Social and political judgments are particularly intuitive. On 69, do I want the paragraph? No, just the underlined. Human minds, like animals, this is Haidt says, are constantly reacting intuitively to everything they perceive and basing their response on their reactions. Okay, very similar to what we just said. So let's move on. The third point, our bodies guide our judgments. Our bodies guide our judgments. Next page says, Haidt says, there is a two-way street between our bodies and our righteous minds. Immorality makes us feel physically dirty, and cleansing ourselves can sometimes make us more concerned about guarding our moral purity. Moral judgment is not a purely cerebral affair in which we weigh concerns about harm, rights, and justice. It's a kind of rapid, automatic process more akin to the judgments animals make as they move through the world, feeling themselves drawn toward or away from various things. Moral judgment is mostly done by the elephant. So I got a little distracted. I think my girlfriend just got home. So immorality. This chapter he just goes over, which I found interesting. He goes through a study on how subjects who wash their hands or perform some kind of cleansing routine, like putting on hand sanitizer, were more likely to condemn a behavior than those that did not perform some kind of cleaning habit beforehand. So he's making the claim that there's a link between physical cleanliness and like spiritual cleanliness. And what he says, to wrap it up, it's a rapid automatic process more akin to the judgments animals make as they move through the world, feeling themselves drawn toward or away from various things. So an interesting question is to think, well, why do animals behave the way they do? Do they have moral compasses? Are they just instinctive creatures? Or how are humans any different? Well, we are still animals. In fact, like I don't know if it was the last one or the second, or earlier, where we explain humans are animals, and our ability to rationalize, our thinking brain, our consciousness is a recent evolutionary adaptation. It's new to us, but we still have this old, archaic animal hardware. Our software has been updated, but our hardware is still the same. Our hardware still behaves similar to that of other animals, like dogs and cats and monkeys and every animal that reacts, that feels reactions to external events, to things like, and easy examples, man. Easy examples are things that fucking scare us, things that's or natural reactions of disgust, or feelings of attraction towards other people, or things that make us laugh. These are some things we're attracted to, some things we're repelled by, that we're not attracted to. We want to stay away from people that like people that are sick. It's cold and flu season, baby, and you go to any public space right now and you're going to hear or see somebody coughing or sneezing. And I mean, it's been like 3 weeks. I'm still kind of congested. You could probably hear it just a little bit. People are sick. People get sick. And there's something in our biology that urges us to stay away from people that are sick, from people that are rude, from people that are mean, and people that are attractive are people that are kind and people that are like physically attractive. There's things in our hardware, in our biology, that attract and repel us to certain things. Let's see, where was I at? Our bodies guide our judgments. Yeah, we did that. The fourth is psychopaths reason but don't feel. And I didn't get any points from that. But it's interesting that he includes this in an explanation for our elephants, that psychopaths reason but don't feel. And from what I remember, the explanation followed the logic of how psychopaths. It was interesting. He showed things that were not relating to. Okay, so psychopaths were shown images of gross scenes, like dead people, and a normal neurotypical person will react with some kinds of levels of disgust, but psychopaths will not. Yet I can't remember the exact examples he uses, but there are some things that psychopath, like they were able to demonstrate that psychopaths still feel feelings of disgust, but just not about the right things. They feel disgusted about not about humans getting sick or being mutilated, but let's see. I'm just skimming through really quickly to see if I can find, because I thought it was really interesting, but I did not note it. It's a heritable condition. No, I don't think I got it. All right. So that's the idea. Psychopaths reason, but they don't feel it. The fifth point is that babies feel but don't reason, which is interesting again, as he uses these two examples to help us understand our elephants. About babies, he says the researchers concluded that the capacity to evaluate individuals on the basis of their social interactions is universal and unlearned. It makes sense that infants can easily learn who is nice to them. Puppies can do that too. But these findings suggest that by 6 months of age, infants are watching how people behave toward other people, and they are developing a preference for those who are nice to them. They are developing a preference for those who are nice rather than those who are mean. In other words, the elephant begins making something like moral judgments during infancy, long before language and reasoning arrive. I thought that was really interesting. Babies, even before they have any fucking clue what's going on, before they can, before consciousness really, before like self-awareness, their elephants are observing how people are interacting with each other. And when someone is rude to someone else, like babies can read facial expressions. They can sense fear and anger, but also can sense comfort and happiness and pleasantness, whatever. Babies can sense that just by looking at other people's facial expressions. And so when babies see that someone's being mistreated, they are creating moral. They're creating. I don't want to say moral barriers, but they're developing a moral guard. Yeah, I guess. Learning about what's good and what's not good at a really young age. The last point, right, of the 6 points is effective reactions are in the right place at the right time in the brain. I mentioned effective reactions earlier. Let's talk about it for a second longer. This is from Haidt. The areas of the brain involved in emotional processing activate almost immediately, and high activity in these areas correlates with these kinds of moral judgments or decisions that people ultimately make. Oh shit, that didn't help us. That was just the conclusion. Of course. What was the context? I don't exactly remember. Oh, was this about the trolley? Yeah, there was but I think the trolley problem parts comes later. When people read stories involving personal harm, they showed greater activity in several regions of the brain relating to emotional processing. Across many stories, the relative strength of these emotional reactions predicted the average moral judgment. Sorry, I'm struggling to remember this point. But the chapter's not over. Let's keep going. Oh, wait. I made a note here too after that section that I just read. Our emotions drive our moral compass. Okay. Let's keep going. Our emotions drive our moral compass, demonstrated after subjecting patients to several different trolley problem scenarios and examining brain activity. Subjects responded as utilitarian or deontological. Utilitarian is it's a line of philosophy that I think I align myself with most, where in any given situation, the best course of action is the one that leads to the highest amount of good. So the trolley problem, where there's 5 people in a trolley and they're going to die, but if you push one person off a bridge, then you can save the 5 people. A utilitarian would say that's that pushing the one person off the bridge to save the 5 is the most ethical and the most moral course of action, while a deontological person would deontology is that how you say it, is ethical theories that place special emphasis on the relationship between duty and the morality of human actions. The term deontology is derived from Greek. That's from Britannica.com. It's the moral philosophy of normative ethics theory that the morality of an action should be based on whether that action itself is right or wrong under a series of rules or principles. Okay, I like that definition better. So in that same trolley problem where there's 5 people going to die on the train track, but you can push one person off a bridge to save them, a deontologist, I'm guessing, is that if it's your duty to not kill somebody. I think a deontologist would say that the best course of action is to not kill the one, because you actively killing one person is more wrong than killing one person to save 5 people that you weren't responsible for. You had a choice to kill one person or not by pushing the one person off the bridge, but you didn't have a choice when it came to those 5 people are going to die. So it comes down to duty and to choice. I'm not explaining it very well because I don't think I'm a deontologist. I think I'm a utilitarian. But it doesn't mean I want to push a person off a bridge. I probably wouldn't. I don't know. I'd probably cower. Shit. Trolley problems are hard. Yeah, I just pulled up some examples, but I don't think I'm going to get into it. I think we're going to move on. If you're interested more in trolley problems, there's subreddits that go into so many different kinds of trolley problems. And you can change one word in a trolley problem and it becomes a completely different scenario. They're fun to some level to engage in, but they're also exhausting. So bear that in mind. Okay. We can hardly ever reason our elephants or our emotions to believe in something. Other people are better at changing the minds of our elephants than we are of ourselves. Haidt says, when does the elephant listen to reason? The main way that we change our minds on moral issues is by interacting with other people. We are terrible at seeking evidence that challenges our own beliefs, but other people do us this favor, just as we are quite good at finding errors in other people's beliefs. Remember the advice from Jesus and Buddha. Looking in other people, we're good at pointing out the faults of others and not pointing out our own. Haidt continues, when discussions are hostile, the odds of changing are slight. The elephant leans away from the opponent and the rider works frantically to rebut the opponent's charges. But if there is affection, admiration, or a desire to please the other person, then the elephant leans toward that person, and the rider tries to find the truth in the other person's arguments. The elephant may not often change its direction in response to objections from its own rider, but it is easily steered by the mere presence of friendly elephants. That's the social persuasion link in the social intuitionist model, or by good arguments given to it by the riders of those friendly elephants. And that's the Reasoned Persuasion League. Yes, we're less likely to engage in conflicting arguments for our own sake. And I think really only true through and through philosophers are willing and able and capable of actually delving into opposing beliefs on their own, by their own volition, actively seeking out and trying to understand a conflicting position. And I really do think most people, I would just speculate, most people are not willing to consider that their worldview might be wrong. I know I've been there. I know I'm still there in a lot of ways. It's easier to work to defend your own position than it is to try to defeat it. And this is one thing I think I've mentioned. When I'm on TikTok, I actually spend a lot of time listening to conversation. They call them debates, but they're mostly just arguments between theists and atheists and flat earthers and globers, whatever. These people host these lives, these live conversations, and this is the same issue that I take to debates, even when listening to people like Christopher Hitchens or Sam Harris or Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro. Everyone is working so fucking hard to defend their own worldview, their own opinions and beliefs, that I don't know who is actually or genuinely working to consider what is most true in the universe. And of course, those people would defend themselves by saying that they are not convinced by the opposing arguments. They've heard them all. They've heard everything, and they're not convinced. So what's frustrating is I've listened to dozens, if not hundreds of hours of these debates, and I've actually become more convinced of the existence of God in the process than I have of the non-existence of God. Not in the specific theist Christian God, not in any specific God, but in just the existence of any kind of supernatural entity. For reasons that I think I explained pretty well in the episode, I think 3 episodes ago or 2 episodes ago, about God's omnipotence. I've become less convinced that there's absolutely no God from those conversations. And I know I have a bias towards atheism, especially with my just with my background and my own preconceived notions, my experiences. The issue I take with anybody defending a position is who is actually willing to consider other people's positions, the opposite position, the conflicting or contradictory position. And I just don't think very many people are willing to even engage, let alone with other people. Very, very few people are willing to engage in opposing positions on their own. There's a reason that most people subscribe to their own confirmation bias websites, and they only follow the people they want to hear from on Twitter and TikTok, because that's you. And then you get sucked into those confirmation loops, affirmative loops. Anyway, if you want, the point that he's making here is, if you want. Well, not even if you want, but our elephants are more inclined to be persuaded by other writers, not our own writer. Our own writer is poor at convincing our elephants. It takes really, really good arguments from our writer to convince our elephants of anything. But beyond that, even when our elephant isn't willing to engage, our elephants are more inclined to respond to positive experiences of other people's riders. So when you're conversing with a friend or a family member or your professor or your boss or your girlfriend or boyfriend, and you feel that they actually care about you and they're interested in you and your position, then their feedback is going to mean so much more, and you'll be more inclined to consider it in your worldview. Your elephant will be more inclined to change its mind, and that has nothing to do with your own rational mind. These just become your emotions, and Mormons call that the Holy Ghost. Mormons and I guess most Christians call that the Holy Ghost, but Haidt calls it intuitionism. So there's one more point before the end of this chapter, and then we are going to do the other chapter. I'm not fucking only doing one chapter per episode. That's insane. I just ramble, dude. Just fucking ramble, and I don't even regret it. Okay, so pause and pausing gives more interaction between the rider and the elephant. Pausing between reacting to external stimuli. He says, in other words, under normal circumstances, the rider takes its cue from the elephant just as a lawyer takes its instructions from a client. But if you force the two to sit around and chat for a few minutes, the elephant actually opens up to advice from the rider and arguments from outside sources. Intuition comes first, and under normal circumstances, they cause us to engage in socially strategic reasoning. But there are ways to make the relationship more of a two-way street. So I'm going to jump right into the conclusion. He says the elephant, or our automatic processes, is where most of the action is in moral psychology. Reasoning matters, of course, particularly between people, and particularly when reasons trigger new intuitions. Elephants rule, but they are neither dumb nor despotic. Intuitions can be shaped by reasoning, especially when reasons are embedded in a friendly conversation or an emotionally compelling novel, movie, or news story. But the bottom line is that when we see or hear about things that other people do, the elephant begins to lean immediately. The rider, who is always trying to anticipate the elephant's next move, begins looking around for ways to support such a move. That is Elephant's Rule, Chapter 3. We're moving on to Chapter 4. Vote for me. Here's why. So remember, Chapter 3 was explaining our elephant. Chapter 4 now is explaining our rider, explaining the mental processes, the consciousness that we experience in understanding our emotional processes, our passions that are our elephant. He says the most important principle for designing an ethical society is to make sure that everyone's reputation is on the line all the time, so that bad behavior will always bring bad consequences. That feels like that kind of comes out of nowhere, but it's an important point to building an ethical society. Make sure everyone's reputations are on the line all the time. I've said vaguely so many times that because we have our ancestors' hardware. We're animals by nature, and our instinct is to do what we need to do to fit in with our tribe and with our community, so that we aren't outliers or outcasts, so we don't get ostracized. We want to stay within our tribe or within our society because it increases our chances of survival. This is what our ancestors believed. This is what we are genetically wired for, is to figure out how to remain in the tribe with the group. So this is where our reputations is ingrained in our behavior. If our reputation is that we're a shitty person, and if that becomes well spread within the tribe, no one's going to want to work with us. Our chances of survival are going to go down. Our chances of reproduction are going to go down. And those are the people that usually didn't survive. We're all the the ancestors of humans that believed their reputation was important to maintain. So if you want to build an ethical society, says Haidt, make sure everyone's reputation is on the line all the time so that bad behavior will always bring bad consequences. He says appearance is usually far more important than reality. Ah, yes, okay, it's starting to click. It's starting to come back. We essentially we're willing to lie and cheat. He uses the Glauconian ethics, which comes from Plato. I don't know where it comes from Plato, but Glaucon essentially argues that would you rather live in a society where you were morally upright and totally ethical, but nobody recognized you? Or let's see, not even that. It was you acted ethically, but everyone believed you were unethical or a liar? Or would you rather be a liar and deceitful, but everyone thought you were ethical? And he presented like both sides of the argument, and essentially, according to the science and the research that he proposes, we are naturally inclined to lie and deceive and appear ethical rather than actually be ethical, but have people believe that we are lying and deceiving. We would rather lie and deceive and appear like we're not. Even if you believe that you would behave otherwise, the science supports that we're more likely to lie and steal and cheat, even if when we appear to be ethical. He says, he says our moral thinking is much more like a politician searching for votes rather than a scientist searching for truth. Again, the writer of The Elephant isn't trying to convince the elephant of what's moral or true. It's the writer is trying to justify the steps that the elephant takes. The writer is not a scientist seeking truth. The writer is a politician looking for votes, justifying the decisions that the elephant makes. Let's see, page. I say first, we are more obsessed with appearing moral, just, and correct than actually being those things. Below are 5 studies and points supporting this logic. Okay, so Glaucon proposed what I just described, and his opposition was Tetlock, Tetlock. And it comes from some material produced by Plato. So the five points to support that we are Glauconian, that we would rather appear just and moral than actually be those things. The first is we are obsessed with polls. And are we not? Are we not obsessed with polls, especially considering this upcoming election? Are we not obsessed with appearing, like having the appearance of popularity? None of these polls mean anything. If you're Donald Trump and you are leading by 30% or whatever, does it mean anything if you end up losing the Republican nomination? Does the polls mean anything in reality? They don't, but we care so much about them. We care about appearing popular and appearing desirable. Haidt says Leary's conclusion, according to the study for this point, was that the sociometer operates at a non-conscious and pre-attentive level to scan the social environment for any and all indications that one's relational value is low or declining. The sociometer is part of the elephant. Because appearing concerned about other people's opinions make us look weak, we, like politicians, often deny that we care about public opinion polls. But the fact is that we care a lot about what others think of us. The only people known to have no sociometer are psychopaths. And I said right underneath, we care about what others think about us. We do. And we always will, because if you didn't in our ancient early human times, you were often cast out and didn't survive and didn't reproduce. The second point, our in-house press secretary automatically justifies everything. Yeah, I love this point. He's like, if you want to see like apologetics at its finest, go listen to a United States press secretary meeting. The goal of the press secretary is not to field questions from reporters and researchers and to conclude with something that makes sense. It is to always defend the policies that you're promoting or projecting. Always. And that's why Christian apologetics are so frustrating to me. Even and there are atheist apologetics, and any kind of apologetic is so frustrating. I accept that people are not convinced by opposing arguments, but if you're not aware that you're not convinced, if you think that if you just believe that you have all the answers, or that your beliefs are entirely unequivocally correct, you're the problem. There's some things that you shouldn't be open-minded to. It's a kind of a gray area. When do you actually stop considering the opposing view? And one thing that I struggle with was like 20 years ago or 10 years ago, Richard Dawkins decided or publicly announced that he will never debate. Was it no. Yeah, I think it was it was about evolution. Oh, I don't remember the exact quote, but he said that it's so definitive, the science is so definitive that he'll never debate on the topic again. And I struggle with that because I like principally agree that there some who's debating mathematical truths. Some things are not up for debate. But that selection is so small. Philosophically, you can debate just about anything, even things that for most people and for me for most of my life made so much sense, like things like I exist. There are people that believe that we don't actually exist, and they would argue that the reasoning for non-existence is greater and more rational and more real than the argument for existence. Metaphysics is a fucking crazy line of philosophy. And my consensus with most metaphysics and with like the brain in the vat theory is whatever the truth of that reality is, regardless of whatever it is I am only currently experiencing what I am now currently experiencing. I'm not experiencing anything else. I'm not if I am a brain in a vat, or as fucking what's his name? Oh my god. Oh my god. I think therefore I am. Who said that? I could see his black curly hair. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm losing it. It's a Frenchie. Who said it? Descartes. God, fuck. That was so hard. Descartes argued, we can't prove that we're not being influenced or tricked by a demon, by devils. So we can't prove that that's not the case. And so we can't actually believe anything that's happening to us, because we can't prove that what we're experiencing is authentic. We can't prove that we're not being influenced by a devil. And so I'm like, okay, because I can't prove that doesn't mean that I'm going to propose that it is true. I'm simply going to acknowledge that that could be the case, but no matter what, I still have to behave a certain way. I still am experiencing what I'm experiencing. So, anyway, that the apologetics, it's a very fascinating and frustrating approach to these dilemmas. So we're talking about press secretaries who are master apologetics. He says people are quite good at challenging statements made by other people, but if it's your belief, then it's your possession, your child almost, and you want to protect it, not challenge it and risk losing it. And the last thing I'll say about it is, this is what I struggled so much with when it came to religion and leaving the church. I was so convinced that I was right and that God was real and that Joseph Smith was a prophet and restored the church and that Jesus actually lived as the Messiah and actually died on the cross and was actually resurrected and actually died for my sins, and that the prophets are actually ordained by God. It was I believe, like, and those things were unequivocally true. And the moment that I considered that they weren't, the moment I opened my mind to the possibility that they weren't, this is one reason why Mormon leaders, church leaders, strongly discourage their members from engaging in this kind of open-minded research. It's become less so over the years, but you go rewatch or watch for the first time that documentary that came out on the what was that family's name? I think it started with an H, and they murdered their sister-in-law. The Utah Mormon family. It was really popular. It happened in like the 70s or the 80s. Hoffman? No, Hoffman was different. Anyway, so because when you become open-minded, you don't realize that the church is crazy when you do that. That's not what happens, and that's I disrespect that attitude. I guess I kind of sound like it by saying, "Oh, when you open your mind to other possibilities, you'll leave the church." That's not true, and that's not what it's about. What I opened my mind to was trying to figure out the truest sense of reality, and I'm not convinced, not even in the slightest anymore, that what the church claims to be true is actually true. And not just the Mormon church, but any religious entity. So it's not a dig on Mormons specifically, although I have my own personal beefs with Mormonism, because I was a Mormon for 21 years and I served the mission and did the whole thing. I have my own beefs, but I am not... I'm not only rejecting Mormonism, I reject all of theism. So opening your mind, it's gray area. What do you keep your mind open to and what do you close your mind on? We can talk about that later. Let's keep going. Let's get through these points. The fourth point, reasoning and Google can take you wherever you want to go. I said, why theists and atheists will never see eye to eye and why their debates are unproductive. Yeah, I already kind of touched on this, but I'll read the quote from the book. Haidt says, the social psychologist Tom Gilovich studies the cognitive mechanisms of strange beliefs. His simple formulation is that when we want to believe something, we ask ourselves, can I believe it? Then we search for supporting evidence, and if we find a single piece of pseudoscience, we can stop thinking. We now have permission to believe. We have a justification in case anyone asks. In contrast, when we don't want to believe something, we ask ourselves, must I believe it? Then we search for contrary evidence, and if we find a single reason to doubt the claim, we can dismiss it. You only need one key to unlock the handcuffs of must. This is a very strong point, I think, that Haidt makes here, that can I believe something and must I believe something do carry tremendously different implications. And this is the root of the problem I have with the debates and the apologetics is theists and atheists both do it. They say that if this could be true, if this can be true, then I reject the entire premise. But if this must be true, then everything else that comes with it is also true. So when we want to believe in something, we look for the smallest piece of could. And then we use that to carry us through the entire system of belief. And I think the easiest, or maybe just the first example that comes to mind for theism, for me, that I could use is I can't prove that God did not create or cause the Big Bang to happen. If God could cause the Big Bang to happen, then I can use that to carry my entire system of belief. Yeah. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I think I think this point is super, super powerful, especially for debates and apologetics. Because if we say that we must believe in something, maybe I'll just read what he says about when we don't want to believe something, we ask ourselves, must I believe it? Then we search for contrary evidence, and if we find a single reason to doubt the claim, we can dismiss it. So, very powerful. The final point, he says, we can believe almost anything that supports our team. We're more interested in our group's interests than our own self-interest. I think that's a pretty powerful claim, but here's what he says to support it. It's page... Oh. Yeah, okay. He says, like rats that cannot stop pressing a button, partisans may be simply unable to stop believing weird things. The partisan brain has been reinforced so many times for performing mental contortions that free it from unwanted beliefs. Extreme partisanship may be literally addictive. I made a note, explain the study and go back by going back a page and reading the George Bush slides, but we're running short on time. The claim though that he says we can believe almost anything that supports our team. So if you're a MAGA person or if you're a Biden person, then and if you can find a single morsel of a reason to justify one of those candidates, then you can accept you can find a reason to follow them through the thick and thin of it. And if you're a MAGA person, then if you can find one shred of a reason to doubt the other person, then and this is all to say that this is our rioter at work. This is our rioter seeking to justify our elephant's intuitions, our passions, and our first inclinations or reactions to our external stimuli. It's our elephants that's creating these dilemmas. Our elephant is what gives us these strong pulls and pushes towards and away from things. And it's our minds, it's our riders that are constantly seeking to justify these feelings that we have that our elephants gives us. Excuse me. So to wrap up this chapter on page 104, he describes more about why, or rather, I attribute this to why I think debates are unproductive. He says, each individual reasoner is really good at one thing: finding evidence to support the position he or she already holds, usually for intuitive reasons. We should not expect individuals to produce good, open-minded, truth-seeking reasoning, particularly when self-interest or reputational concerns are in play. But if you put individuals together in the right way, such that some individuals can use their reasoning powers to disconfirm or the claims of others and use sorry, I moved my book. But if you put individuals together in the right way, such that some individuals can use their reasoning powers to disconfirm the claims of others, and all individuals feel some common bond or shared fate that allows them to interact civilly, you can create a group that ends up producing good reasoning as an emergent property of the social system. Again, this is essentially empathy. Having empathy is, for the opposing person. This is why it's so important to have intellectual and ideological diversity within any group or institution whose goal is to find truth or to produce good public policy. Sorry, he keeps going. And if our goal is to produce good behavior, not just good thinking, then it's even more important to reject rationalism and embrace intuitionism. No one is ever going to invent an ethics class that makes people behave ethically after they step out of the classroom. Classes are for writers, and writers are just going to use their new knowledge to serve their elephants more effectively. If you want to make people behave more ethically, there are two ways you can go. You can change the elephant, which takes a long time and is hard to do, or, to borrow an idea from the book Switch by Chip Heath and Dan Heath, you can change the path that the elephant and rider find themselves traveling on. You can make minor and inexpensive tweaks to the environment, which can produce big increases in ethical behavior. You can hire Glaucon as a consultant and ask him how to design intuitions in which real human beings, always concerned about their reputations, will behave more ethically. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So to wrap up this chapter and part 1, wait a minute. Did I get ahead of myself? No, that's it. That's pretty much the I underline on the next page in the summary. Reasoning matters, particularly because reasons do sometimes influence other people, but most of the action in moral psychology is in the intuitions. Now, okay, then he says here, in part 2, I'll get much more specific about what those intuitions are and where they came from. I'll draw a map of moral space and I'll show you why that map is usually more favorable to conservative politicians than to liberals. Yeah, we're just getting into it, you know? We're just getting started. We're just getting fucking started. Where's my bookmark? Did it fall out? Yeah, it must have fallen out. Yes, sorry. I don't know what happened to my bookmark. Found it. It's on the floor. So that's part 1 of The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion by Jonathan Haidt. We're going to pick this up either next week or in the following weeks. We're starting school, which means I'll have more reading material to bring to the podcast. Like I did a couple weeks ago, I brought one of my favorite research papers from last semester and dissected it. It was on God's omnipotence. It was a very, very thought-provoking article for me, and I loved breaking it down and discussing the talking points. So I assume that we'll get a little bit more of that in between these book episodes to break up the pace and also to give me some time to catch up on the book. But also because it's what I'm so engaged in the literature in school that I'm already going to be studying it. So the things that are the most exciting for me are the things that I'm going to bring up. So anyway, if you want to catch the next episode live, you know what to do, baby. You got to go to cadenkelly'sblog.wordpress.com. We're live on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube on Mondays, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening. So if you don't want to miss us, you got to follow and you got to turn on your notifications, and that way we'll pop up and you get right into the action with me, Caden Kelly, the host of Caden's podcast, Book Club with Caden Kelly. Otherwise, I appreciate you for tuning in. I hope that you learned something from this. I noticed for the first time that I've got like a 3-star rating on Spotify. And I love that, dude. I got 9 reviews or feedback, whatever. And the average is like 3.2 stars. I love it, dude. I love that it's not 5 stars. Mostly because I love that people are actually engaging with the podcast. I have no idea what I'm doing wrong or what I that people dislike, but you know what? I'm doing this. I'm not doing this for any of you motherfuckers. You got it? I'm doing this podcast for myself. I'm doing this to be a smarter, more capable individual. I'm doing this so that I can understand these principles for myself, so I can have a greater understanding of the world around me, of reality, to make the best decisions, to make the most informed decisions I can, to have an appropriate perspective of other people, to try to be more patient and compassionate and empathetic. I think that these things are so important to improve my critical thinking skills. I want to embody these things for myself. And talking about them on a podcast, talking about them is what's important. That's what I'm after, is just talking about these things at all. But talking about them on a podcast, so I stream it and then post it on a Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. For you, the listener, is you can get the meat with me. But if you're interested, you got to go read the books yourself too. You got to go do your own work. Listening, I got started on this journey by listening to Joe fucking Rogan, and learning about Jordan Peterson through him, and Jocko Willink and David Goggins and Cameron Haynes and all of those tough motherfuckers that are work harder, not smarter kind of guys. And it got me going on this podcast. It helped me turn my physical health around. It's helped me be more in tune with my kind of more in tune with my emotional health, my mental health. Most importantly, it got me inspired to do this podcast, to read these self-improvement books. And then doing the podcast has inspired me to go back to school, to finish my degree, to get a degree, and to just keep fucking growing and learning, because I'm only responsible for myself. And if you're listening to this and you fucking don't like it and you want to vote for one, I want you to vote 1 stars. I want to have a 1-star podcast, because that means that I'm doing this for myself. I'm truly doing it for myself. Truly. So I don't give a fuck. Obviously I kind of do, or I wouldn't talk about it. But it's a fun talking point. I am doing this for myself, but I appreciate the feedback. So go to my blog, Caden Kelly's blog.wordpress.com, to find the live, or just keep checking on these episodes weekly. And that's all I got to say. It's 9:30 tonight.